In the fall of 2006, my mom's mom, my grandma, whom I affectionately knew as Mama, passed away, and she left behind a bass guitar. This is the story of my Mama's Peavey RSB bass guitar. When I tell people this was my grandma's bass guitar, I always seem to get a chuckle out of it. Most people don't think about grandmas playing bass guitar, but she wasn't always a grandma. She'd been playing bass guitar for years. I only have 2 photos of her playing bass, and both of them are with her playing what appears to be a Gibson EBO. When I was a junior in high school, she gave me that bass, and that was actually my first bass guitar. The neck had spoiled, and I remember anything past the 5th fret was nearly impossible to play. I think the action at the 12th fret had to be at least 3/4 of an inch high. Earlier, I said the bass appears to be a Gibson EBO, but I don't believe it is a Gibson. Look closely at the headstock of these pictures and compare them with the real Gibson EBO headstock. You'll see a bit of difference. Perhaps if you know what it could be, let me know in the comments. Growing up, I didn't see her Gibson copy at home. What was sitting on the guitar stand in her living room was a Peavey RSB, and it's been around as long as I can remember. I found a Peavey RSB operating guide online, and this guide was printed in 1993. I would have been 6 years old if the guide is an indication of when Mama got that bass. However, I reached out to Peavey, and the customer service representative said that that bass guitar was manufactured in 1988. I don't know, maybe not. I remember being a child, wanting to touch the strings and hear the low rumble of the bass, and getting scolded for it. What's curious about the bass is Mama had it strung up B-E-A-D. I asked her about it before she passed, and she said anything on the G string is a waste of time, so might as well have a low B. I tried out her B-E-A-D setup for a few months when I first got the bass, but it really wasn't my thing. The RSB stands for Rudy Sarzo Bass. Rudy Sarzo is a heavy metal bass guitarist from the 70s and 80s, and 90s. And frankly, I had no idea who he was even before making this video. I've looked him up, and he's a great bass guitar player, that's for sure. He's played with a lot of great performers such as Ozzy Osbourne, Quiet Riot, Blue Oyster Cult, and so go check him out. In 2006, I began a band with my friends in order to play music for our youth group at church. And although I did start out playing the Gibson copy, it wasn't long until Mama had passed away and I was given the Peavey RSB. This was a major upgrade at the time. In university, I had the opportunity to join the University Jazz Ensemble. That opened up a whole lot of doors to new music that I haven't heard before. I started listening to Jaco Pastorius, Victor Wooten, Marcus Miller, and it wasn't long before I was infatuated with the Fender Jazz bass. I have owned several Fender Jazz basses in my time. In 2009, I purchased my very first Fender Jazz bass. It was a 5-string made in Mexico Fender Jazz bass, and I loved it, except the day that I thought real players play 4-string basses. So I sold the 5-string bass and purchased the made in Japan Marcus Miller edition of Fender Jazz bass, which, oh man, absolutely beautiful bass and amazing sounding bass. The year after that, I purchased a Squier fretless jazz bass, which I changed all the parts out, Mighty Mike parts, Warmoth parts, Stu Mac parts, and made an amazing fretless jazz bass. The Peavey RSB went back to my mom's house, and I never thought about it for years. In 2018, I moved overseas and I sold nearly everything I owned, including every musical instrument that I had owned up until then. I brought no instruments with me, but I always had a hope of getting back into playing music again. I never bought a bass while I was overseas, but when I went back to the US in 2023, I went to my mom's house and was reunited with the Peavey RSB. I decided to bring it back overseas, and it survived the plane trip all the way back. Every time I bring out this instrument, I always seem to get a compliment from someone. It does seem to have a natural beauty to it. But to be honest, I had to learn a lot about what this bass was in order for me to make this video. For one, I've never seen another Peavey RSB. You don't see them in videos on YouTube. There seems to be a few for sale here and there on sites like reverb.com, and a few mentions of them around forums. But overall, this bass seems to be created and dropped to make way for the Peavey Grind and the Peavey Cirrus models. This bass has a koa body, a maple neck with a 24 fret Paul Faro fretboard. I don't know if I'm saying Paul Faro, I should look that up. It has 2 active VFL pickups, a volume knob, a blend knob, and a passive tone knob. Yes, active pickups, passive electronics. The VFL pickups are an interesting technology. There's a PDF available that shares how they work. I had the bass set up with Ernie Ball flat wounds, but I just got some new strings, some Dario round wounds, and really excited to hear what this bass sounds like with some fresh strings on it. The tone knob on this bass has always been a problem. It kind of just flops from side to side easily, and I actually didn't even believe it worked until recently. Listening to it real closely, it seems to roll off the treble just a tiny bit. Listen to these 2 tracks and let me know if you can hear a difference. I know one of the reasons why you're here is to hear the bass, so let's get to it and hear what the Peavey RSB sounds like. Hey, and for those kind of people who like to hear with a little bit of post-processing, maybe what it sounds like through an amp simulator, I use Native Instruments guitar rig, and I use an Ampeg kind of guitar amp on there with a 15-inch cabinet. So here it is with post-processing.